Ooh, I'm on one today, everybody. This is going to be a fiery video about selling out to big tobacco, about minstrelsy, the amazing work of Greg Tate, the truth about Megan Fox, and mostly about Bob Dylan and MGK. You see, just yesterday, the trailer for the new album by MGK came out, and it was narrated by Bob Dylan. To say this upset me is an understatement, but I wanted to really understand why I was so upset and see if I can explain it to you, and hopefully you will be just as upset as I am at these two corporate sellouts. One, it displeases me because it debases Bob Dylan artistically in my eyes. I think for him to give the stamp of approval to somebody like MGK is so far beneath him, I cannot even think of a parallel. Okay, if in the 70s or 60s he supported Sha Na Na or something, even that, I cannot imagine a lower artist for him to support. And two, it is very clearly an extended commercial for Marlboro cigarettes, completely funded and banked by the Altria conglomerate. All right? That's why this upsets me. Now let's start with the first one. Let's start with why does it upset me that Bob Dylan, who, if you don't know, I've made many videos about Bob Dylan. I own over 20 Bob Dylan CDs. I've read several books about Bob Dylan. I have several Bob Dylan posters and paraphernalia. I've seen him in concert, 4 times, going all the way back to the 90s. I love Bob Dylan. I love him. I love him. I love him. I love him. He's one of the greatest artists of all time, period. That doesn't mean I can't say the truth about some of the things that he does, like lending his artistic validity to MGK. So I'm going to explain this as though I were speaking not to a super diehard online Dylan, acolyte or worshiper, but someone like Kirk, my former professor, who is now a friend, a musician, a band called Consuelo's Revenge. Check them out. They've got a good album coming out soon. And he sort of taught me a lot about writing about music and about music criticism. And he's a big Dylan fan. So I'm going to explain this not to the people who show up in my comment sections every time I talk about Dylan, trying to explain how I don't understand things. And instead, I'm going to talk to Kirk. So what's my beef with MGK? The artist formerly known as Machine Gun Kelly. Well, it's the same beef that I had with Post Malone. And I want to try to develop this in a deeper, more interesting way. You see, MGK started out as a white rapper. White rappers traditionally have a hard time finding purchase, they have a hard time gaining entry into hip-hop, but then once they have entry into hip-hop, it is much easier for them to accrue a larger audience. And so MGK started off and was a popular rapper, working with a lot of other rappers, was respected fairly well in the hip-hop culture and the hip-hop community. Okay? And then, when it became convenient, when it seemed to make sense, he, turned into a pop-punk star and made rock music. And then, made pop country music. He just took off the trappings of hip-hop and kept the cool, kept the authenticity, the rebelliousness, and just traded in on his whiteness. Now, I'm not going to say culture vulture, because I don't think that's a good enough term. I think the term we need to use... Now, listen, this is a very loaded word. It's a very charged word, but I'm going to define it very clearly. Okay? So before you get super clenched, understand. It's not a question of being a culture vulture, simply. It is a question of being a minstrel or practicing minstrelsy. Okay? The definition of minstrelsy, taken straight from Wikipedia, supported by Merriam-Webster, any other dictionary that you want to look at, minstrelsy was an American form of theater developed in the early 19th century. The shows were performed by mostly white actors wearing blackface makeup for the purpose of portraying racial stereotypes of African Americans. Okay? That's what it is. Now the question is, are all white rappers minstrels? To that, I would like to take you to the work of the amazing, perhaps the greatest hip-hop journalist of all time, the Greil Marcus of rap, Greg Tate. Okay? This is his biggest work, Fly Boy and the Buttermilk. It needs to be republished. But not that work. I want to refer to this. Okay? Everything but the burden. What white people are taking from black culture. Okay? I want to talk about this. Now, he died recently, R.I.P. to Greg Tate, and I'm going to just sort of talk about how he saw things, how he framed white rappers as a form of minstrelsy, and perhaps nuance that further as it pertains to MGK, who didn't exist when he published this book back in 2003. In case you need any kind of evidence of the kind of thinker that Greg Tate was, this is what he said. This isn't about white rappers. This is just a general thing that he said. This is the kind of writer he was, okay? This is also to Kirk, who loves really good writing about music, all right? The way hip-hop collapsed art, commerce, and interactive technology into one mutant animal from its inception seems to have almost predicted the forms culture would have to take to prosper in the digital age. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Tate, one of the greatest music writers in American history. Now, let's get back to my primary theory here, okay? And I'm aware of the irony. I'm aware of the irony that I'm a white guy who talks a lot about hip-hop, talking about a black guy, talking about the ways that white people take from black culture. I accept all those criticisms. I accept the irony. All I can say is my effort is to give more than I take and to never put on airs. I never try to pretend like I'm a part of hip-hop community or hip-hop culture. I try to be a scholar, okay? If I fail, sometimes I do, that's on me. So, anyways, let's talk about what he was saying, okay? Let's first of all go to the very beginning. Now, this whole book is a collection of essays. They're all quite good. There's an amazing one on Steely Dan. It's really good. But as far as stuff that Greg Tate actually wrote, he just wrote the introduction here. So I want to just kind of quote a couple things from here. And let's just go to the basic principle, the title, Everything But the Burden, which is a great title. The title of this book is a Florence Tate original. Mom once wrote a poem by the same name to decry the long-standing, ongoing, and unarrested theft of African-American cultural properties by thieving, flavorless white folk. A jeremiad against the ways our music, our fashion, our hairstyles, our dances, our anatomical traits, our bodies, our soul continue to be considered ever ripe for the plucking and the biting by the same crafty devils who brought you the African slave trade and the Middle Passage. Opening words of the book from Greg Tate. But let's go more specific into this concept of minstrelsy and white rappers. He uses the term, the fairly controversial term, wigga, W-I-G-G-A, which is short for white, and then a word I do not say. Okay? I think you can figure out what that means. The wigga, the so-called blank blank, who apes blackness by, quote, acting hip-hop in dress, speech, body language, and in some case, even gang affiliations. Some in the African-American community see the appearance of the wigga mutant as a comical form of flattery. Others as an up-to-date form of minstrelsy. Okay? So this is not my idea. This is Greg Tate's idea. Minstrelsy, or blacking up, the application of burnt cork grease to a white or black performer's face, became a staple of American entertainment in the 19th century when our homegrown vaudeville circuit turned this crude and mocking form of masquerie into a means of making a living wage. Though the cork grease applique has faded away, the sight of white performers attempting to replicate black features still generates among African American spectators a host of responses, from joy to horror to sarcasm to indifference. Now, the way that I want to try to nuance this and go further is to say, okay, I think this is a fair parallel to make between minstrelsy and wiggas, okay? But I don't think he is, and I certainly do not think that this applies to every white rapper. I mean, Eminem's very popular, but he has never actually betrayed the art of hip-hop or the art of rap. Action Bronson, Aesop Rock. Paul Wall, he is just a part of the African-American communities that surround him, and he happens to be white. Of course, he still benefits from white privilege. There's no question of that. But or people like Alchemist, okay? And hopefully people like myself, people who I'm not in it, but, I'm trying not to just profit from, I'm trying to give more than I take. And I would say all those people I just listed are people who try to give more than they take. And most importantly, they don't try to take off. See, it's the act of removing the cork paint. That's what makes it a minstrel show. Because Eminem, I don't think, is trying to imitate anything. Paul Wall, I don't think, is trying to imitate anything. I don't think, in my opinion, your opinion may be different. Tell me in the comments if you disagree. I'm totally cool with that. But in my opinion, they are not trying to imitate something. That is just a natural expression, a way that hip-hop helped them to express themselves and the way that they express themselves. Vanilla Ice, the original culture vulture of rap music, when hip-hop no longer worked for him, went into making new metal music. Okay? That's what he did. He went into new metal music. And Of course he did, because that was a place where he could go. He could take off the cork paint and say, I'm not a rapper anymore, I'm a Limp Bizkit guy. And that's why it's so offensive to me, what Post Malone did and what MGK did. When Post Malone went country, when MGK went emo, they got admitted into these spaces. They had all of the cool, they had all of the trappings, they had all of the acceptance. And then when it became more profitable for them, it turns out that wasn't how they actually felt. They weren't actually a part of this culture. They were using it. And all of a sudden, what you thought was their face was just a mask, was just a cork-burned mask that they could take off when it was convenient to jump in to larger, white, dominant structures of power in the music industry. All the while holding on to the residual faint whispers of cool that comes from hip-hop and rap and Black American culture. The slang, the face tattoos, all the edginess, all the rebelliousness. They use that to their advantage, and they dropped it when it was convenient. And most importantly, with MGK, he used it to make absolute garbage. He actually wasn't that bad of a rapper. He really wasn't. I mean, he wasn't great, not my thing, but he's talented. He was a talented rapper. But then when he went country, if you haven't seen Pat Finnerty's video on Lonely Roads, his cover, his interpretation, his interpolation of Country Roads by John Denver with Jelly Roll, it is one of the worst pieces of music of this century. Truly terrible. And that's what he does. That's what he did. Took off the face paint, removed the mask, and it was proof that he just took everything but the burden. That's what he did. Side note, this is going to get weird now. MGK is married to Megan Fox. What's up with Megan Fox, everybody? Megan Fox is like the axis point of white rappers in the entertainment industry. Did you understand this? You see, Megan Fox used to be married to Brian Austin Green, who played a character named David Silver on 90210. A character who was very famous for, according to all my friends who were girls in college, being the hot one on 90210, which I don't get. Luke Perry's right there. Jason Priestley's right there. Why did they like Brian Austin Green the most? I think because of his character. He became a rapper on that TV show, a white rapper. I'm going to quote some bars from him. Yo, West Beverly, my name is Dave. I'm going to give you all the songs that you crave. All my babes are going to be my slave, and all from a guy that don't even shave. I felt you cringe, all right? But there it is. He actually, okay, truthfully, Brian Austin Green's rap album, he just called himself Brian Green, One Stop Carnival, isn't that bad either. Check out the song You Send Me. So it's weird, right? That like she went from one person who was famous as being a kind of inauthentic white rapper and then went to another. And the same year that she met Brian Austin Green, she worked with Dave Faustino on a TV show just for one season. It's weird. David Faustino, who played Bud Bundy on Married with Children, who had a joke of being a rapper, calling himself Grandmaster B, but also he put a poster of Nas up on his wall, and Nas himself talked about that as being one of the highlights of his early career, seeing his poster up on Bud Bundy's wall. He then went on to found a nightclub, and I just recently texted Justin Hunt, the company man, just say he's still respected. He's like, yeah, he is. David Faustino is the real deal. Not every white participant in hip hop is a minstrel or a culture vulture. He's been a part of the hip hop community in Los Angeles for 30 years. Friends with Eazy-E, friends with Exhibit, right? That's the whole thing. And it all passes through Megan Fox. Okay, that was just a little side bit there, but I'm getting obsessed with that. What is that thing? What is okay? So, listen, I'm going to give Bob Dylan a break here and say he's old. What does he know? He just is told by somebody this is somebody cool. Maybe his grandkids like MGK, and he decided he'd do it. He does, let's be very clear, have a history with rap music. Bob Dylan, and this is quoting an article from American Songwriter, which itself was quoting an article from Rolling Stone, which is paywalled from me, talking about rap music and rappers. Quote, these guys weren't standing around bullshitting. They were beating drums, tearing it up, hurling horses off of cliffs. Hurling horses off of cliffs. they were all poets and knew what was going on. He said that the next art voice of the generation would have a chop-top hairdo who came from that world and who knew it. So Bob Dylan has always given rap its credit. In 1986, on this album by Kurtis Blow called Kingdom Blow, all right, amazing cover with the Twin Towers there. Never seen it, never heard it. It's an okay album. It's not great. Kurtis Blow's first album is much better than this. But the first words on Kurtis Blow's album from 1986 come from Bob Dylan. I've indulged in higher knowledge, took a scan of encyclopedia, keeping constant research of reports in our news media. Kids starve in Ethiopia, and we are getting greedier. The rich are getting rich, and the needy's getting needier. All right? Fine. You know, it's fine. It's good. Now, I've always sort of suspected that this was a corporate thing because they're both on Columbia. Kurtis Blow was the first rapper to ever be signed to a record label, a major record label. So I thought maybe that was that. But no, let's give Bob Dylan the credit that he knew what was going on, and he thought maybe Kurtis Blow would be the voice of a generation. Okay? So there's a little bit of credit to him. But Bob, man, Mr. D, the insufferable banality of this 1-minute trailer cannot be overstated, understated. I forgot where I was in that sentence. It is impossible to say how insufferable this is. This is a video, okay? I'll describe it to you. It is MGK, the former white rapper, now emo country star guy, riding around on a motorcycle, going through America with a bunch of models, male models, female models, pretending to have a fun time on the road in the Great American Road Trip. It is all filmed or is either filmed analog or made as a digital facsimile of analog recording to look like an oldie-timey video with him in Las Vegas and going to diners and on the open road with his Harley Davidson. Okay, it is the most trite garbage you have ever seen that has this trite garbage Bob Dylan voiceover. Lost Americana is a personal excavation of the American dream, a journey to find what is lost. This album is a love letter to those who seek to rediscover the dreamers, the drifters, the defiant. It's a sonic map of forgotten places to the spirit of reinvention and by the guy who made fucking Emo Girl, and the quest to recapture the authentic essence of American freedom, from the gold neon diners to the rumble of the motorcycles. All right, I gotta stop. Okay? What makes this crazy is that, just go one step further. Bob Dylan has, to his own admission, always been something of a fraud, right? That's part of the fun. Part of the fun of Bob Dylan is that he's kind of a fraud. And he loves Woody Guthrie, and Woody Guthrie was also kind of a fraud, right? Amazing artist who made some of the greatest music in world history, American history, all of it, okay? I could talk to you for hours about how great Woody Guthrie is, but to a certain extent, he was kind of putting on the airs. He was sort of taking on that drifter persona. And then Dylan took the mantle from Woody Guthrie as the cataloger of Americana, as the drifter lost in this ever-increasingly corporatized, privatized world, just going across the country and recounting it. By having this voiceover with the image of MGK, it is implying a line of continuity that goes from Woody Guthrie to Bob Dylan to MGK, which hurts me deeply. Okay? It is painful. I remember when like MC Hammer was like crowned the king of hip hop or something by Michael Jackson. No, the godson of soul. I remember when James Brown crowned MC Hammer the godson of soul, and that was offensive, but at least Hammer had talent. At least Hammer came from Oakland. At least Hammer, no matter how pop he got, at least he did something to deserve that. MGK does not deserve to be the next in line. This ridiculous, I'm going to use an academic word, simulacrum of Americana. Easy rider, easy poser, sleazy rider, okay? Now listen, Bob Dylan might have done this for the bag. He did IBM commercials. Do you know what I thought about that? Who cares? Who cares, man? Who cares? Who cares? It's all corporate. I don't mind. He did an ad for WGU, which is an online university. I'm not super cool with online universities, although apparently that one is maybe better than the other ones. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not a boomer. So if he wants to sell the soul of the times they are changing the same way that Michael Jackson helped the Beatles sell the spirit of revolution to Nike, I don't care. We all live in a corporatized hellscape. That's that. Get your bag. But this, a Nobel Prize in Literature supporting a charlatan, a neo-minstrel. Bob Dylan fans out there might go, minstrel? Because from the Basement Tapes and then on Self-Portrait, there's a song. The Minstrel Song by Bob Dylan, who says, who's going to throw that minstrel boy a coin? Now, that wasn't minstrel in the 19th century sense. That's the older sense of minstrel, is just a wandering musician of any kind. And so I think this song should be, I think this overdub should be considered who is going to help that performer of minstrelsy get a bag. And that's the question. It's getting a bag, Skye. He's just getting a bag. He's just getting a bag. MGK is getting a bag when he sells out hip-hop. Post Malone's getting a bag. And in our current day, if you say you get a bag, that is immediately excused. All behavior is excused if you say you're just getting a bag. But let's take a second to talk about who's filling that bag. Who's writing that check? Because it's not BMG music. Who signed MGK? Sean Puffy Diddy Combs, Bad Boy for Life. All right, that's how we started. Started on Bad Boy, then went to Interscope. I think he's now on Universal. Dylan is still on Columbia, so there's no corporate thing there. But do you know who's writing the check? Do you know who I know wrote the check for Bob Dylan? Altria. Do you know what Altria is? It's a multinational conglomerate. A cigarette company, everybody. Philip Morris changed their name to Altria to hide what they really were. Now, Bob Dylan's been unintentionally advertising cigarettes for 60 years. A lot of people started smoking because Bob Dylan looked cool smoking. Okay? I smoked for a couple of years. Bob Dylan was a big part of that. Altria owns Marlboro, Black & Mild, Skoal, Virginia Slims, Players, Parliament. They own a minority stake in Juul. This whole thing, if you can't see it, I don't blame you, because we're so accustomed to seeing product placement. They were like, what's going on? No, Skye, it's just a coincidence. It's just a cool throwback, because the whole time, MGK is wearing a jacket that is white and red, Marlboro white and Marlboro red, with a chevron, the universal symbol of Marlboro. Lost Americana is written in the Marlboro font. It is a Marlboro pack. He is wearing a jacket that is intentionally designed to imitate a pack of Marlboros. And if you think I'm being conspiratorial, this is how the entertainment industry and big tobacco has been working for years. Ian Gately released a great book back in the early 2000s or late 90s called Tobacco, where he talks about the history of tobacco, like from prehistory to now. And he has a whole chapter about how it worked with corporate placement, especially in movies. The tobacco industry got on with what it did best, providing people with reasons to smoke. Since television was out of bounds, it concentrated its efforts on feature films, and if smoking was not already scripted into a movie, its presence could be purchased. The process of paying filmmakers money to feature branded goods was called product placement. Philip Morris, now known as Altria, the usual leader in marketing innovation, set a gold standard of product placement for Superman 2 in 1980. For a reported payment of $42,000, Marlboro appeared 22 times in the film, whose climactic battle between the Man of Steel and various foes takes place against a backdrop of Marlboro billboards and inside of a Marlboro truck. That's not in the book, but he didn't mention that. Lois Lane, Superman's girlfriend, smokes Marlboro throughout the film, a habit she never displayed in 50 years of comic book appearances. You see, they couldn't advertise on TV anymore, so they had to advertise in movies. And now it's seen pretty poorly to advertise in movies, so what can they do? They go to influencers. They go to musicians. That's how they do it. That's how they're trying to get us. They're just still doing the same thing. You think I'm crazy? I did that whole video about Skoal, Chevy, and Browning by Morgan Wallen. He makes multiple references to Skoal, also owned by Altria. I guarantee you they wrote him a check. I guarantee you he's on the bankroll for Altria. Let's keep going here with another fascinating example. Smokers in the audience would not be fooled by fictional brands, so why not film actors smoking real ones? And here we have a contract between Brown and Williamson Tobacco, the people who make Lucky Strike and other cigarettes like that, and Sylvester Stallone. Okay, there's Sylvester Stallone's signature, and here is the rest of his contract promising to feature smoking Brownie Williamson cigarettes in the next 5 movies: Rhinestone Cowboy, Godfather 3, he didn't end up being in that, Rambo, 50-50, and Rocky 4. And wouldn't you know, once that contract was over, Sylvester Stallone made a movie called Cobra, in which the character is always chewing on a toothpick and hates smoking. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no morality in capitalism. So that's what this is. This is not some kind of weird thing. Look around and notice. Just notice how much advertising, how much cigarette advertising is happening. And that's what this is, because the dream of cigarettes is freedom. Freedom from society, freedom to be out on open road. I smoked for 2 years. It was awesome. I loved it. It was a lot of fun, right? I'm not saying like I don't understand it, but like it's terrible. It's addiction. It is a lack of freedom. It is addiction to an item, but it gives you the illusion of a freedom from death, of youth and life. And MGK is smoking the whole time in this trailer, and he's wearing the Marlboro jacket. And in case you're saying, but Skye doesn't actually say Marlboro cigarettes, the Marlboro chevron is so powerful that in the 2000s, cigarette brands were forbidden from advertising on Formula One race cars, the biggest sport in the world at the time. Okay, Formula One race cars. Michael Schumacher was racing for Ferrari. He was the highest paid athlete in the world, the most famous person in the world. If you're American, you never heard of Michael Schumacher, I'm sorry. That's how famous he was. And he just drove around in a red Ferrari that was essentially a Marlboro pack. All right? That's what it was. And eventually, they had to take the Marlboro name off of the car. So do you know what they did? Marlboro still paid the millions and millions and millions of dollars to have the tail of the car, to have the back of the car, like the spoiler on the back where the primary sponsor is listed. They just took the name off and kept the chevron. Just the image of that red and that white was in and of itself enough of an advertisement. So that's why this upsets me. Not only is Bob Dylan supporting what I think to be a perfect example of the worst case of white rapper minstrelsy, but he's also, I'm positive, getting paid by a tobacco company to try to further enslave and kill young people into a life of tobacco abuse. I told you I was on one. All right, there you go, everybody. Tell me what you think in the comments. All right, I'm probably actually going to listen to some more Bob Dylan, man. I love that guy's music all the same. All right, till next time, there's the camera.